Spotlight with Premier Panton is an in-depth focused interview analyzing the issues facing our country. These one-on-one interviews allow the Premier to explain decisions, answer questions, clarify misinformation, and address community concerns. Leaving no stone unturned, Spotlight is proudly brought to you by the Cold Hard Truth on Bobo 89.1 FM.
All right, folks, we're here with the Honorable Wayne Panton, Premier of the Cayman Islands, to talk a little bit about budget. There's been some sort of questions arising in the community as of late about what's happening with the budget. An email went out, so we're just going to try to clarify as much of this in a quick interview today to hopefully address any concerns or general questions that people in the public may have. Now, Premier Panton, can you explain to us, please, about the budget process? I think a lot of people don't really understand how this works. Is this something that you do every single year, or is it every couple years? How does it work?
Yeah. So I think about 2016, it was changed to become a multi-year budget process. So as it is right now, the budget is done for 2 calendar year periods. So we came into office in 2021,
right?
And we had a short period of time to do a budget. You know, there are times when you can do a temporary budget to bridge a gap. But we did a temporary. I don't think we did a temporary budget. We continued with the existing budget under the original administration, the last administration, and then moved into doing the SPS, which is a strategic policy statement for the next budget.
Right.
The budget is comprised of a couple of steps. One is the strategic policy statement, or the strategic development of the budget, and basically that requires you to say, give an indication of what kind of policies and what the cost of those policies are, approximate cost of those policies are. So it's sort of an indication of what the next budget will look like. And as I said, that's the policy part. And then you have until the December 31st of every the end of every budget period to make sure that you have the new budget in place for the next 2 calendar years.
Okay.
So that's where we're at now. So we are finishing up the 2023, which is the second year of our budget, our first budget, and then we have to get the 2024 and 2025 budget approved by Parliament through Finance Committee. And that has to be done by December 31st in order to have it in place for January 1st going forward.
Right. So you start off with the strategic policy,
Right.
which is, just give an example, that might be you saying, for this government, a priority is going to be funding school lunches.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a good example of something that we prioritized. That was our policy position, and we adopted that. And that was reflected in our budget ultimately for 2022 and 2023. And that the cost of that was somewhere in the region of about 16.5 million. Obviously when you budget these things, you're projecting potential costs,
Right.
approximate costs. You are trying to make sure that you have enough money there that you can deliver on the policy. It may turn out that it costs a little bit less than that. Sometimes it turns out, unfortunately, it may cost a little bit more. So you have to make some adjustments. But obviously, if it costs less, that's great. You can deliver what you want to deliver, to be able to help the people of the country, to help families. And let's face it, that has been a considerable help. We started with the primary schools, and then we moved into the shortly, I think within 6 months, moved into the high schools. So that has helped Caymanian families to the tune of hundreds of dollars every month, to reduce their cost. They're having to give their kids lunch money and pay for lunch otherwise through programs. So that's a good example. I mean, there are many others.
Right.
We are a people-centered government. Right? We have taken an approach of recognizing that, particularly coming out of the COVID environment, and the post-COVID environment, we know that people are going to be struggling. The impact of COVID was very significant across our economy. So we knew people were going to be struggling, and we needed to be able to support them. So we supported them by continuation of some of the COVID stipend programs. We did extensions of some of the business support programs. And then we included, the funding for the school lunches, which included breakfast and snacks and lunch and this type of thing. So, we've also done things like we've granted, a lot of fee reductions for seniors. I remember when I was minister previously, one of the things one of my constituents wanted was to have fee reductions for seniors who have to register vehicles every year and this type of thing. And that's what they got delivered, So we've had several different scenarios of fee reductions for seniors. We've done across the board duty reductions for young families with children, for women's products, these types of things that generally help families. That's what we've been trying to target, trying to deliver in a targeted way to help families and help people. And yes, they do cost money, and it means a dedication of resources. But that's what we have been doing, to reflect the fact that we're focused on trying to make the lives of our people better, and to try to support them in an environment where we are transitioning out of, we're still in COVID. Remember, we took over, we were still pretty much isolated, and we still had all the borders closed. We had to work through how you transition that with a board that was set up in government to provide advice. And we successfully did that. Yes, you will recall there were periods when we first, despite saying, look, this is going to happen, once we reopen, we're going to have COVID in the community, there was a lot of panic and concern. So we pumped the brakes a little bit to make sure that we had a few weeks to settle people down so that they were able to make the mental adjustment. And then we moved on, and we've successfully transitioned into an open economy. We have transitioned into excellent economic performance, strong, growing, and stable economy. We've got the best unemployment numbers that any government has had for decades.
Right.
The challenges we've had, I think everybody recognizes we've had challenges around the supply chain issues that continued after the COVID. We've also had the issues with the geopolitical disruptions, like Russia deciding they were going to invade their neighbor, Ukraine, and that caused all of this commodity volatility, particularly around energy. The cost of fuel, but also things like the cost of food, and basically these things have driven up inflation around the world in most countries in the world, and it certainly happened in the U.S. And what happens in the U.S., because we are a huge importer of products from the U.S.
Yes.
It impacts us, and there's very little we can do about that, about controlling those prices that we end up, and that inflation we end up importing. to prevent it from happening, but we have to find ways to mitigate those impacts in Cayman. The good thing, of course, is that our the rate of inflation here is coming down. It's meaning it's still, prices are still going up, but they're going up at a slower and slower pace.
Right.
And hopefully, we'll get to a point where it flattens out mostly. I don't think that the reality is, unless you have more undesirable situations like like a recession in an economy, the prices don't tend to go down. Right? I think we all know that. But if we can get it down as low as possible, then you are limiting the impacts on our people.
Okay.
And right now we have it's just in excess of 4% at the last measure. So we had 11%. We'd had 9.5%, 9.6% late last year, and now it's down to about 4.6, I think it is, thereabouts. So it's definitely flattening out. So that's good news. But it still poses a challenge. We all understand that Cayman is not a cheap place. Paradise isn't cheap. We live in a wonderful place, but we don't produce a lot of things. We don't grow a lot of things. We import it all, and we happen to be hundreds of miles away from our source markets for these products and services. So
let's talk a little bit, because you said you're in the middle of the 2023 budget process right now.
Right.
So how long does that process normally take? Are we talking about a week, 2 weeks, months? Like, what does it look like in real time?
Well, the SPS was delivered in May,
Right.
And then basically it's usually several months of working through the budget, and then you either present the budget in October or November, and then it gets it goes through the parliamentary process, which is typically Finance Committee. Well, it's presented to Parliament, and then you go into Finance Committee, and the opposition and the public get the chance to see and hear discussions around different points on it, explore, and prod and try to understand what the budget looks like and what can be expected from it.
So are you at the
And we have to
tail
do
end
that
of
by
that?
we're not in the parliamentary process yet. Obviously, we're in
just
the process of finalizing the details so that the team in the Ministry of Finance are able to put all the budget documentation together. Unfortunately, it ends up being a whole stack of paper. And one of the things I would love to be able to do is whittle that down significantly. Ideally, I would love to be able to have paperless approaches to these types of things. But if I can cut it in half, if I can cut it by 2/3, that would be amazing as well. Not just for the concept of sustainability and all that, but it just makes life easier for everybody. For the government, for the opposition, for the staff that have to work on it.
Yeah. So you've taken over the role of finance minister after there was some shifting around in your cabinet, and that seems like quite a undertaking.
Yeah, it is.
So how has that transition been for you in terms of the budget process? Because I'm sure your finance ministry, they're ultimately responsible for pulling and putting it all together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have not had responsibility for the budget previously in any way, whether I was Premier or whether I was Minister for the Finance. So, there is for me, these types of things are short transitions. So, I mean, I understand enough about it, and there's no question that I have a very, very supportive team in the Ministry of Finance, and we are working through that. I think, the reality is we have scenarios where it's not just the people of the country that are facing difficulties with cost increases, and the government is facing some of those same difficulties. The cost of everything, cost of products, cost of services, everything has typically gone up. And there, as I said before, there are sometimes delays with, because of supply chain issues and other things. There are delays with getting certain things done. So our challenge is to try to find ways to be as efficient as possible, but also have the reality that, and deal with the reality that costs have gone up. So one of the things, one of the challenges we have been working through is how can we deliver the same or really better services and support for our people in the country while trying to control our expenses. So you would have seen, it was someone leaked it to the media, a memo that I sent around in August asking ministries and agencies to basically not spend something of money if they didn't have to. Most years there are savings in the budgets. People don't end up spending everything that they think they can spend. So the reality is, you encourage people to try to find as much efficiencies and save as much as possible. Because I know that the reality is that there are many, many demands out there. There are many expectations, and at the end of the day, as a responsible government, who have been given the privilege and honor of serving the people of this country on a strong democratic footing, we have to honor the obligations that we have to be good stewards of the public resources, good stewards of the money of the people of this country. And if that means I have to say to 21 ministries and agencies, be careful how you spend money, save money where you can, do not spend money just because it's in the budget, then of course I'm going to do that. That's a prudent thing. That's it's what I should be doing as Minister of Finance.
So the reaction that we were getting from people in relation to that correspondence is, oh my God, the government's broke. People are going to start losing their jobs. They're going to put in another hiring freeze. Is that the fiscal position of the country?
No. First of all, I've heard a lot of comments about, they're cutting the budget and all that sort of stuff. And unfortunately, that gets used very loosely. Sometimes it gets used by some of us in government very loosely. Cutting the budget is something that would really, truly, technically reflect going back and looking at the budget that has been approved by Finance Committee and going through a process of withdrawing the authority that has been given to spend money.
Yes.
And that's not what that is technically cutting the budget. And that's not what we're talking about.
Okay.
What we have been talking about is how can we deliver services, how can we deliver initiatives for the people of the country to benefit our people, to maintain or improve their quality of life without just spending and spending and spending. You can throw tons of money at something and it may not be a smart thing to do.
Exactly.
And I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that I've seen too much examples, or too many examples around our region and even amongst many of our sister overseas territories that reflect approaches that are not prudent. And I am not going to be the person who is going to put this country's fiscal stability at risk. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid that, while at the same time trying to deliver, create the right environment that continues to make the economy strong, continues to create the labor environment that we have that is quite strong. But listen, are there Caymanians unemployed? Absolutely. So we know even though we have the strongest unemployment record in 30 years in Cayman. We know that there are people who still need assistance. And our challenge is to find the most efficient and effective ways of doing that without wasting too much resources. So that's across the board what it's like for us to to try to work these things out. And sometimes it takes time. It takes time to do that. And we have not. And it's unfortunate, when you're trying to do these things and you send things around to try to be prudent, somebody sends it out and then they start talking about comments around, oh, the country's broke and civil servant salaries are going to be cut and all this stuff. That is not true. That is not true. I mean, you'll recall we have been, as we are required by law, been very transparent with the financial information of the country and the government. And we have noted previously that we have had a budget surplus in 22, and we're required by law to have a surplus. That budget surplus initially was based on the initial numbers, I think 47 million, and then once the audit was completed and adjustments were done to reflect the final numbers, it came out to somewhere around 54 million.
Okay.
I know a lot of people think that's a lot of money, and yes, it is a lot of money.
Yep.
On an individual basis, it's a lot of money.
Of course.
But the country is at a point where we have had record revenue. We've had over $1 billion in revenue in 22 for the first time. But we also have an environment where our population has increased. The numbers of Caymanians have increased. The demands of the business environment have increased. We still have issues, impacts relating to what has transpired in the previous couple of years. And those require resources to continue to try to manage and help as much as possible. So it is easy to see how people will think, oh, you've got lots of money, just spend it, just do this, just do that.
Because that's the general, whenever people hear the word surplus, they
Right.
always think that means government is...
So let me put it in context for you, right? Our budget for 2023 was is 950 million. That is the agreed budget. But every year, quite often you get situations which arise where you realize that perhaps in this area or this area, we need additional funding to do the things that need to be done. And as I said earlier, sometimes you overestimate, sometimes you underestimate. The idea is to try to get it spot on as close as possible or be a little bit over. But sometimes with the best will in the world, you just don't get it right. So there are sometimes requests for supplementary spending. And in 22, that supplementary spending was 98 million over the budget then,
Right.
which was 920. So we ended up spending about 52% of that. So again, it's a reflection. They say, well, we need the spending, we need the supplementary spending. There's two ways that can happen, but one is a process which is approved by cabinet to a limited extent, and there's another way which has a pretty much unlimited extent, which can be authorized by Parliament. And that situation can lead you to spend additional money. For 2023, our budget was 950, or is 950. But we also have additional, spending requests because of a variety of things. We therefore, like as I said, 950. We can just round that up to $1 billion. Right?
Yes.
So if I have a surplus of 50 million, what does that amount to as a percentage of revenue, which is just over $1 billion, or as a percentage of what I've been spending, which is just under $1 billion. We can just generally refer to that as 5%.
Right.
Right. If I said to you or anybody who is listening to this, if you got a 5% raise in your salary, do you think that would mean that you suddenly have the ability to go out there and spend 2 or 3 times as much, or go and splurge and spend money on all kinds of things? The reality is no. $50 million is a lot of money, but $50 million when you have a country that costs close to $3 million a day to operate is not a lot of money. And we have built into the law, the Public Management and Finance Act, we have built in provisions which try to ensure that we maintain prudent and sound fiscal management. We all know those provisions generally as the FFR provisions, the Framework for Fiscal Responsibility, which had been insisted on, I think, in 2011 by the UK government. So we have to meet those requirements, and we also have to try to ensure that within that space we're delivering what we want to deliver for the people of the country. So one of the things I think we have to recognize is that, you know, the COVID environment and the amount of resources that was utilized when government's revenues were, you know, significantly slashed, those resources need to be replenished in order for us to maintain strong fiscal stability. We have cash. We don't have an issue with cash. We did borrow. We did utilize the facility that had been put in place by the previous government, and we've actually made money on that because it's lower interest cost to us, and we're in an environment where the interest rate environment where opportunities to earn additional return on that money has gone up. So we're in a situation where it's costing us pretty much nothing. We're earning money on that funding, but I would prefer to be in a position where we have cash reserves that are not borrowed, you know. So we're still in a very strong position. We have strong fiscal management going on, and I think we just need to recognize that not only are surpluses required by law, there is nothing wrong with us having a reasonable surplus which helps to strengthen the fiscal position of the country. Because at the end of the day, the stronger we are, the stronger the government's fiscal position is, the more you can do to help people without creating a situation where you are really draining resources and you end up having to borrow money or, you know, to do things that are going to create situations where we lose our fiscal sovereignty, meaning the UK has to approve our budget. That's not what we want.
Yes.
We're a proud, independent people, and we can do this for ourselves. There's absolutely no reason.
So the takeaway then for 2023, there is no cutting of the budget.
There's no cutting of the budget. There's no cutting of civil servant salaries. There's no cutting of resources. This concept of this notion that the country is broke is wrong. It's inaccurate. It's not true. You pick whatever phrase or adjective you want. It's completely inaccurate. So that has to be recognized. But as I said earlier, we do have to recognize that we have lots of challenges, we have lots of requests, and if we stick our necks out too far, then we start to get ourselves in difficulties.
Right.
And we need to be able to be responsible, prudent, and to be able to continue our track record of delivering for people and maintaining that prudence and that strong fiscal track record.
Okay. Now, there was a specific area of concern that was highlighted to us, and I just want to clarify this. So we'd received several messages to say that university students who were on government scholarship overseas were looking at potentially not being able to return for Christmas break. Their tuition wasn't going to get paid. It was like this sort of, dire situation. Have you heard anything about that? Do you know what's going on there? That
No,
they run out of money, basically.
I think there's an exaggeration of some of the same comments you have heard earlier, which came from things like my note of let's be prudent.
Right.
People are extrapolated from that and taken what is not an unusual situation and sort of fit that into the narrative they want to say negatively in relation to the country and the government. We may have issues at times, and it's not uncommon to have timing issues in terms of when the funding is done. But it's not that we've cut anything, it's not that we don't have the money to do it. We are the government that has significantly increased the budget in respect of allocations for scholarships for people who are trying to get bachelors, people who are going postgraduate and trying to get masters or PhDs. We've increased the budgets for those, the allocations for those, and it has helped many Caymanians. Look, we know you don't have to be a scientist. It's not rocket science, and we also have clear examples all over the world, but also in Cayman, from many of even our labor force surveys in Cayman. Caymanians who are educated at a bachelor's level or higher make 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 times as much.
Yes.
Possibly even more than someone who's just got a high school education. So the way for us to really improve the quality of life and the outcome for Caymanians is to make sure that there's a better and better rate of education. And that's what we have been trying to do by increasing our allocations to scholarships. That is going to help them. It's going to help families. It's going to improve their ability to move up the economic ladder, to be able to educate their children better, to be able to feel that Cayman is a place that they can live and they can enjoy life and they can have their best quality of life and be as successful as possible. That's why we're investing so much in Caymanians to try to change that trajectory in a very positive way. So we put a lot more money than has been put in the past. I think we've increased our scholarship levels up to, I think it's about 30,000, and for the bachelor's levels and I think it's about 35,000 now for postgraduate. So it's really helping, and we've done a lot more things than that. I mean, we've had programs where we increased the amount of money for A levels for high school students. We had funding around assisting young people to be able to travel to go and get their visa, to be able to go to attend university.
TVET, I know there was some additional.
There's a variety of additional funding around TVET, both locally as well as overseas. And we'd like that to obviously we'd like to be in a position where we can continue to expand that, particularly around TVET, because academics perhaps are not everybody's cup of tea, but we all know that many of the roles that you can work in terms of technical and vocational training are really important roles and roles in which you can make a good living. So,
absolutely. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up then by talking about sort of the broad outcomes that you're hoping for with your budget going into 2024 and 2025.
Right. So I mean, generally, it is about us improving the quality of life of Caymanians. That is, a top level position, improving opportunities, improving the quality of life. We also have to make sure that the Cayman Islands continue to maintain and improve its position of competitive. So we have competitiveness in not just tourism, but in financial services as well, because that is one of our major areas. We've got a very strong reputation there. We are anticipating good results from the next FATF plenary. So we'll come off the enhanced review or the grey list, and fingers crossed, and with the help of God, we'll get there. But it's looking very positive in that respect. So I think that happened in early 21. We are hopeful that by late 23 we'll be off that list. But that's a part of it. That's about enhancing our competitive. It's about strengthening our reputation, but continuing to meet high international standards. It's also about future-proofing the country, future-proofing our opportunities for people to be able to benefit in the changing economy that is existing locally and around the world. The digital economy is an entirely new area. I know you have a lot of expertise in this area because you bring it to bear in your particular context in media, and you know the extent to which innovation and changes in technology has made such a vast difference. And you also have to utilize services of people with new expertise in these areas. So it's future-proofing the country, future-proofing opportunities, future-proofing the people to be able to do that. And also, it is about things like climate change. It's about sustainability. It's about making sure that we build in resiliency and strengthen the ability of the country and our people to be able to meet those challenges in the future and to benefit and to be able to continue to have that quality of life. We also have a challenge, I think, that we're determined to face and address around modernizing government. We do have to find ways to be more efficient. The Deputy Governor, Mr. Manison, has for some time been talking about the need to improve efficiencies in government, and we want to obviously be able to support that and to promote it and to try to make it happen. I think in the ordinary and normal runnings of government, it is easy to just get tied up in doing the usual things that you do. You have to stop, take time, step back, and look at the opportunities that we have in order to improve efficiencies, so that we can not just continue to expand the budget exponentially, but to do it in the most effective and efficient ways to deliver for people. Even in a context where we've got a growing or have had a significant increase in our population. None of which was, let's face it, none of which was driven by policies of the government. And we didn't say, we're not the government that said, if a government did, that we want a population of 100,000.
Right.
We're not seeking a specific target. We're not implementing policies to try to pursue that. But it has happened in a post-COVID environment, possibly because of the strengths and the way in which we have managed the transition out of COVID. It has happened, and we've got to deal with it. We've got to manage that. And of course, ultimately for us, particularly in the context where we have had this kind of population growth, and most of that population is not Caymanians. Most of it is transient workers, right? We have to recognize that that scenario and that reality brings challenges to protecting and preserving Caymanian culture, Caymanian heritage, and our own Caymanian identity. That's really important to us. As a government, it should be important to all of us as Caymanians.
Yes.
I can tell you it's central to my core. It's central to my being. It's what I feel in every fiber and fundamentally. And we have to make sure that we protect and promote our Caymanian identity, our Caymanian culture, and our heritage, our built heritage, our traditions. All these things are really important. So, we have a specific ministry dealing with youth and culture and heritage, and that's what we want to continue to build on as well, because that's what makes us Caymanians. That's what makes Cayman Cayman. The concept of Caymankind, it wouldn't be Caymankind without our culture, without our identity, without our heritage. So those are things that are really important.
Yes. Well, thank you very, very much.
Yeah. And those are 5 core things that I want people to remember.
Yes.
Improving quality of life, enhancing competitiveness while maintaining or achieving international standards, future-proofing, modernizing government, and also, very importantly, protecting and preserving and promoting our culture, our heritage, our identity.
Beautiful. All right, well, Premier Panton, thank you very, very much. We know how incredibly busy you are, and you've spent some time with us today, just educating, our viewers here on our program, and we appreciate the opportunity to be able to just sit down with you and go over a few things. So
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to do